Hello, Homer. I was wondering if you had a joke you might want to tell me.
Sure, here's a joke. Why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything.
That's not bad. Can you tell me another joke, please, Homer?
Of course. Here's a classic one. Why did the tomato turn red? Because it saw the salad dressing.
That was very good, very funny.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Here's another one that'll knock your socks off. Why don't seagulls fly over the bay? Because then they'd be bagels.
Okay, you're one of the better ones. That's funny. Hello, and welcome to the People Experience Hub podcast. So as you can probably tell from the intro, today's episode of the People Experience Hub podcast is all about AI. Now, I personally have been fascinated with artificial intelligence since probably I was a child, and I saw the first incarnations of what it could even look like with things like Star Trek or any of the sci-fi you saw around the world. You'd be hard-pressed to not be aware of some of the big changes that are coming with AI, particularly the last few years. Things like ChatGPT has just exploded onto the scene, and all of a sudden it's available to everyone. Everyone's getting involved, and everyone is talking about it. In particular, I have noticed this as I've been out to a variety of conferences over the last couple of months. Things like the HR Tech Show, the Water Cooler. But in particular, I went to the Association of Business Psychology's summer conference, which was a 2-day event. I went with Rob Robson, our Chief Operating Officer, and the theme for the entire thing seemed to be about AI in some capacity. But this event was pretty different to the others. At your big kind of trade shows and expos, I saw lots of different vendors talking about what their product does with AI. There seems to be more and more of that going on at the moment, and actually power to them. It was great to see so much innovation coming out in the business market. But at the ABP conference, the conversation wasn't necessarily about these are the things we can do for it, but it was a bit more cerebral, a bit more of a meta discussion of not should we, shouldn't we, but if we are going to, how do we? The main reason we actually were going to the conference was because Rob himself was doing a talk all about AI and its introduction into our business. This talk sprung up from a variety of conversations he'd had with Luigi, who's our head of data and analytics. Now, at the conference, I was lucky enough actually to sit down and chat to some people all about their hot takes on AI. Unfortunately enough, one of those people was also Rob.
Yes, I'm Rob Robson. I'm our Director of People Science and COO at the People Experience Hub.
And you were giving a talk that was titled "Just Because You Can Doesn't Mean You Should," which I believe is a Jurassic Park line.
Is it? I didn't know that.
Did you actually not?
No.
That was from the first Jurassic Park movie.
Okay.
It was about like,
there you go.
Just because they could doesn't mean they should.
Yeah.
You not heard that?
I like the way I like the delivery of that.
Yeah. And the talk really was about AI, and which is what this whole conference has had like a layer of, right? We've even had a chat GPT bot talking.
Yeah, we have. Apparently, haven't used it. Yeah.
I didn't go on it. It was a bit of a laugh, actually. Hang on, what am I going to do? I don't know why.
Mine's low.
With the conference kind of as it is, and kind of coming to a close now, and sort of reflecting on it, I've been asking everyone what their hot take on AI is. So before we get into like the wider conversation that you had, what is your hot take on AI right now?
I think my take, which hasn't fundamentally changed, is that it does offer us huge potential in the workplace. When we're in a reflective kind of environment here, we're thoughtful people. We've really removed the hype from it, and people are generally saying, well, I'm not really sure what that's going to mean. So a lot of uncertainty as to what really the future is going to look like with AI.
Well, no one knows the future of anything.
I think there is so much hype, and it's been really. I think it's been great to be in an environment where there hasn't been hype, at all this last couple of days.
It's actually been more. So from an outsider's perspective, I'm not a psychologist, obviously, but like it's been fascinating hearing the cerebral, not the like should we, shouldn't we, but if we're going to, how should we?
Yeah, I think there's been a spirit of, if you like. Of optimistic, I think someone used the term, optimistic, realistic, discussion on it, and I think that's a good place to be.
I'm Stuart Dasson. I'm the CEO, the founder of Luma Learning.
I am Claire Radford, founder and director of And Culture Consulting.
At first, when large language models came along, if I'm honest, I was scared, because I could see in terms of what we do in personality, kind of threatening because it can do what we do. Then, when I looked at it more, I got excited and could see all the possibilities. And then a final reflection was that helped me on AI. It occurred to me that what we're doing in a large language model is we're training it on some data. And when we say we train it on data, we turn words into numbers. We turn a word into a vector based on what's gone before. We're largely dealing with correlations and patterns. And at that level, I can get my head around it.
Hot take on AI, it will not take our jobs, but if you aren't AI literate, you will lose out to competition. And actually, I had a conversation with a few people yesterday to say, ChatGPT is like having an 18-year-old intern. You've got to give it really specific instructions and you still have to check its homework. It's never going to be as good as a fully formed, experienced adult.
So in terms of, now that I've got my mind around it more, what's my hot take? Well, I'm thinking in terms of what I do, actually. So I'm into personality. I'm into measuring competencies. I'm into helping people be more self-aware and leaders be more democratic at work. That's my bag, as it were. We've gone from boring static personality reports on bits of paper to putting them in PDFs, not much better. Then we've advanced to putting them into apps and making them digital interactive. That's a big plus. We've moved forward the last 5 years. Where AI is going to take us is to just go further down that digital route. So really I see AI as just more digitization, and it means instead of it just being interactive, it'll talk to you. It means that you can ask it questions about who am I, my role, my competencies, and it will be able to, on the fly, give me more contextual advice. So my hot take is, in terms of personality, in terms of competencies, you're going to get more contextual, helpful advice from the system.
Feels like it's going to be more personalised, right?
It's going to be more personalised, and I'm excited about that because that's my passion, is to customise and personalise psychometrics to make them more useful.
I would agree with you, man. So your talk about just because you could doesn't mean you should stemmed really from a conversation you had with Luigi, who's our head of data science.
Yeah, he's our head of data and analytics, and he's he's leading us through this from a technical perspective. And it's been a series of conversations rather than a conversation. And it's because I came at it from quite a naive perspective, which is like we need to get on this bus, and come on, let's get some AI going.
Just plug it into the platform, right?
And I didn't really appreciate really what I was saying, because we all know people who are saying, yeah, we've got AI and we've enabled an LLM in our platform. We've got it.
ChatGPT is powering whatever it is, right?
It's AI powered. It's this. It's that. I used the analogy of a race yesterday, and it does sometimes feel that we're in a race, but it feels like we're probably in a sort of a longer distance race where some people have sprinted off at the start and they're going to blow up at some point. Whereas if we pace ourselves well and we do things well, then we come through well in the later stages.
So I think it was to do with what I found really interesting about your talk, which I really liked, by the way, and is very thematically aligned with a lot of the conversations we've been having here anyway.
By that,
which was cool.
Pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, the some of it was to do with validation, which I thought was important. So, like, how can you validate your results and anything that the machine spits out, as it were? Maybe the more interesting thing to me within that was the sort of systems thinking element, and actually how you can pick. Like, you described it really, really well with the we send it off to this black box and it comes back as whatever it comes back as, whereas actually it's a series of processes and steps. Like, that was a very interesting way of breaking it down, particularly like when we think about how we would apply it.
And that was just a conversation I had with Luigi about text summarization, which is the simplest, but a very simple in principle, but very high value application for us of AI, because it saves people having to read through thousands and thousands of potentially of comments and actually get the themes. Now, they may still want to validate that and should still validate it with their own eyes, but actually to have to have that access to that summary is really valuable. And Luigi explained it to me that yes, we could just put an LLM in there, a large language model,
and it would look great,
and it would be convincing, and it would be fairly accurate, and you could put the whole thing through that one step. So you could write a prompt that says, take these comments, summarize them into themes, describe the themes, and order them by frequency of response.
Beautiful.
Great, sounds
amazing
fantastic.
at doing stuff like that.
But he says it will be fairly accurate, but the problem is we won't really know how accurate, and we won't really be able to sort of test or minimise the sort of hallucinations.
There's also something you pointed out about that, though, to me, which was really important, and I think particularly when we think about the application around it in any of the technologies we interact with, if it goes wrong, whose fault is it?
Well, that's it. So, you know, I'm even more cautious about that after these couple of days than I was, and I'll be really thinking about our strategy rather than just what we're developing next, our overarching approach. Because we will ultimately be responsible if we give bad advice. And although most of the time that will just probably be suboptimal advice and not necessarily with terrible consequences, if it does have genuinely negative consequences.
People stuff, right? So someone could be on a disciplinary or quit or be fired.
Yeah, or we could introduce bias.
Yeah.
And that's on us. So to give that same example of text summarization, you have a task that is breaking the comments down into manageable chunks of information, like phrases, for example. Then you have a task that says there's a piece about summarising, looking for themes. Then there's another task which is to look at the frequency, another task which is to write the descriptions, and each of those is a prompt that can be measured for accuracy, it can be optimised. And some of those tasks in their own right are, as long as they work, they're 100% accurate, because some of it's just kind of more like coding, automating a step. But we can be more confident in doing it, and we have a responsibility and maybe even a legal obligation to do that.
Certainly a moral obligation, I think, and especially when you think about. I really like you used it, but I've heard other people call it the black box thing, right? And actually, what the alternative description was a clear box, and I think that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of like when we were kids and you're doing maths or whatever, and someone says show you're working.
Yeah.
Because in the principle, I know I'd just like to think of the Association of Business Psychologists. We're not all kids doing maths at school, but it's that principle of being able to figure out if there was a problem with it, where is it wrong?
Yeah.
Being able to, and the different types of ways we can validate something being correct. That seems
and minimise the risk.
And I think
there's always going to be some risk,
of course,
but we can minimise it.
I think that's certainly a narrative I've not heard prior to this event. Really, is that a concept of shows you're working, and it's definitely something I'll need to think about some more especially as we head into new uncharted territories of what AI can be.
My name is Rob Baker, and I am a positive business psychologist, and the founder of Tailored Thinking.
I'm Jerry-Ann, with a very long surname, declared transformative. I am a psychometrician, mostly. That's how, but also a chartered occupational psychologist.
My hot take is that I'm an optimist. I think it's going to unlock us at work, or has the potential to do so. But I think we need to learn from the past and realise that as humans we're pretty crummy when it comes to unlocking, unleashing potential through technology. So if we think about emails, if we think about virtual meetings, they had so much promise, but actually what we've done for lots of us has made our work harder for ourselves and inundate and overwhelm ourselves with it. So I think that if we use AI to personalise work and our ways of working, so harness what we're good at, think about how we can improve tasks in a augmented way, and then I'm really optimistic about the future of work and ways of working. I don't know if we know yet, if I'm honest, what the potential is. And I think actually we need to give ourselves permission to do so. And I think that and reimagining what we can do is a thing that I think can be really exciting and what humans are good at in our creative space. But often when it comes to technology, we try and replicate what we already do. So it's like, how can we kind of step into the future and think about what is possible? What's the art possible? Which I think is really exciting, but again, also it's not necessarily easy to do. And often it's like we just want to do what we've already done just faster and quicker and easier. Cars come in every single colour. You can personalise any aspect. We love the ability to personalise what we do And I think, again, there is that ability to go say we can personalize work, we can make it current any color, not just black, in terms of what we're doing. And I think that's tremendous opportunity. But I think there is an element of, as psychologists here at the conference, we have a role of potentially trying to let people know what's possible and being part of that conversation to push people and push organizations to actually create a compelling future that people want to be part of. So we're not in that situation where Henry Ford is saying we just need to force consumers into one way of moving around. Actually, we want to make that as enticing and as engaging and exciting for people as possible.
I don't see it as a replacer. I see it as an augmenter. And for my personal practice, I already use it. I mean, everybody, I think, is using ChatGPT if they want to.
Every single day.
Every single day, exactly. So it's like already augmenting our lives. And as someone else yesterday also said, like, it's nothing more scary than a blank page. And I have the same thing. If I have words on a paper, I can start to write and I flow. If it's a blank page, I don't know where to begin. ChatGPT is my starter. I write quite a lot. So that's really helpful. So in that sense, that's where AI, for me personally, already makes a difference. But I think it can really improve, even like what I do, a lot of science type work. So it's quite academic, trying to be rigorous. AI can really help. There's so many great exploratory research studies out there already of where AI and large language models can help in writing better items or, moving one or two steps ahead of the whole process of creating a psychometric. As I say, I advocate for the science in our field. And although AI could create better psychometrics, I think that's needed. So I'm not scared of my job. I would prefer that because there's too many bad science out there, or everyone that just creates a little survey or a tool and actually it's not really capturing what it needs to, it's not really doing much, but people started now think, hey, we've captured data, so we use the data to predict something, but the data is not actually worthwhile or reliable.
Can't validate it.
And you can't validate it. Yeah, and that's where AI can really help in my field.
So there's a huge amount to think about following on from these conversations. It was absolutely fascinating listening to all the different opinions and really starting to understand how the world is approaching applying AI through a psychological lens. But I wanted to dig a little bit deeper, and so I decided to sit down with the person who sparked off Rob's talk in the first place. Luigi has been working for the People Experience Hub for a number of years and heads up all of our data science and people analytics pieces. He's been the author of some of our biggest reports, works directly with our clients, and has got an extremely educated view on artificial intelligence and what it all means, and in particular, where we're going with it.
My name is Luigi. I'm the head of data and analytics for the People Experience Hub. I do all the data processing in the back, behind the scenes, for data science, anything that Rob tells me to.
And you're in charge as well of like our direction around AI.
Around AI, and I do a lot of research around AI and machine learning in general, and how we incorporate that into our product.
My understanding of like things like AI is so prompt orientated. Is it just learning how to do prompts better, or like what?
No,
talk to me about what it is.
One of the first things that gets drilled into us in the course is what is AI? And I know that's kind of going back to basics.
Whoa, what is AI?
Yeah,
so deep.
And essentially, there is kind of a spectrum of techniques, and it starts very much all the way on the left, let's say, with statistical techniques. Then they compound very quickly into algorithmic techniques, and then you get into kind of supervised, unsupervised machine learning algorithms that are kind of a bit more complicated and a bit more. Let's just say they're just a bit more advanced than what the stuff on the left is, and then eventually a series of those algorithms working together then eventually compounds into different areas of what artificial intelligence is.
I think this is the magic of AI to me. As someone who just like sits outside it, I type in a prompt in a box, and it just whizzes away in the background and gives me a contextually correct answer, usually.
So the kind of AI that you're talking about is GAI. Is the proper abbreviation, and is generative artificial intelligence. And again, taking that example of the spectrum of it, where does it come from? So I can tell you that there is a probability algorithm called the Markov chain algorithm, for example, And what that algorithm does is it predicts the next word in a chain of words, and it generates a series of words and each of them and the next one is just based on the probability of the previous words that's being used.
I've heard this description before. It's just really good at guessing the next word, right?
And the most the most famous example of that is your text messaging app. So when you're texting, it knows kind of what the next word it is you're going to type.
The suggestions I get at the top, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's the kind of the most simplest way of looking at GAI, and then the most complicated way of looking at GAI is OpenAI, Omni, Claude Sonnet, and all of those guys.
It just seems like magic. I can't describe it any other way, because whenever you see it in action, it seems so effortless from the human and such great results. Yet there's so much. This is the thing. I have no idea how much goes into it. Like, my iceberg of ignorance is deep.
No. So I think the word magic is really relevant here, because I don't know if you know the quote, Arthur C. Clarke, something that's not distinguishable in terms of science is essentially called magic. But I may have butchered that quote actually. But the point I'm trying to make is, as we've kind of like evolved our different algorithms, and the algorithm that was very much has made things like GPT capable is the transformer algorithm, and giving it huge sets of data, giving it loads of text, and letting it learn by itself, training it on all of these huge sets of data. And when I say huge sets of data, I'm talking about terabytes and terabytes of text that's been scraped from the web and kind of videos and stuff like that. And essentially what that algorithm is doing is it's finding hidden patterns amongst all the text that it's given. And you could, so that's the kind of like new age GAI that exists today. And that very much is the same as a simple algorithm based on probability that looks at all the text that you've ever written and just kind of learns your speech patterns in a way. In terms of like scale, right? It's the difference between like looking at your text and just looking at everything ever written on the internet. Like in terms of scale, in terms of like training it, being able to look at an algorithm that looks at probabilities in your text, that's something that can be done in an instant. But training on a data set that's so huge for weeks or months at a time to see what kind of hidden patterns it does. And now we've kind of gotten almost to a point where we don't know what those hidden patterns are, or those hidden patterns are almost uninterpretable.
Well, it's kind of like trying to imagine a fourth dimension to me.
Yeah.
Like, what you've just described there, it's so complex, so many systems interplaying with each other,
Yeah.
so many things to think about.
If you look at the human brain probably is very good at certain tasks that a machine isn't. So there's almost a juxtaposition here, because it's like, if you look at like the efficiency, the amount of energy a brain needs to perform certain tasks, it can outperform a lot of computers on like certain pattern recognition things.
The old one was just identifying objects, right? So like identify the chair.
Yeah.
Like a computer could, until a couple of years ago, it could not do it.
Yeah, and I think also, very much a lot of the models that we have today are based on training data, whereas like humans don't need a lot of that. And it's all very relative, because it's like, what are you comparing AI to? Are you comparing that to a full-grown adult that's had a life experience? Are you comparing that to a 3-year-old? Or are you comparing that to, an ant, a worm, or whatever it is, right? So it's very nuanced, and it's very hard to kind of make that comparison.
Interesting. So I wanted to get onto the subject, particularly as it pertains to the People Experience Hub.
Yeah.
We live in we're a technology company. We think about AI all the time, partly because, like, candidly, the market is demanding that we do so. Like, the wider world is sort of waiting to see what we do with AI.
Yeah.
And, we're a data company.
Yeah.
What you've just described about analytical advantages and just, like, ways of analysing big data that have not been available before, like AI gives us the opportunity to do so. So I think my question, and like what I'd love to understand a bit more about, is from your perspective, how are we approaching AI at the People Experience Hub?
So, okay. So firstly, I'll go back to a little bit. I'll backtrack a little bit. So, from my point of view, looking at AI for us is inevitable. So it's actually something that has been in discussion since before it was cool to talk about GPTs. Since before all of that, it's a conversation that Rob and I have had several times around how can we gear ourselves up to go in that direction. And the reason why that is because when you work in analytics, you realize that there is almost an inevitable black hole that sits in front of you, which is you get unstructured data, you structure it, you get it prepared in a form, and then once it's prepared in a format, it then becomes part of a automated process. Once that automated process takes hold, you can start building automated insights from it. Once automated insights take hold, you can start automating actions from it. And when you kind of look at it and zoom out of that whole process, there is some form of intelligence there, right? You get some information, it gets combined in a specific way. You add some stuff, some context from your expertise from the outside world, and then suddenly there is knowledge on the table, and we know that knowledge is power. So we take that knowledge and we do something with it. So from certainly the data point of view, it was always going to be the direction to go to. Now, you fast forward in terms of like now, and what we have now is the kind of democratization of AI, and so there are a lot of building blocks available to do stuff with it and to go further and beyond with it. And in terms of kind of where is it that we kind of want to head to in terms of like the philosophy of it within the PX Cyber, well, it's always been about our customers. It's always been about how do you use the power of AI or the semblance of intelligence, as we talk about, to amplify the customer. How do you empower the customer to make better decisions or to have a look at things that maybe weren't so visible before?
I always think there's sort of two things. There's facts and then there's opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with the world in which we work, and particularly when I think about like working with HR and businesses, a lot of decisions are made within businesses because of opinions rather than facts.
Oh, yeah.
Just in life, right? We all make decisions based on opinions rather than facts. But when you're dealing with, thousands of people and their well-being and the way in which you structure and build your business, like the success and failure of a commercial enterprise, opinions might be easier to go after, but facts will get you further. And when I think about, again, what you're talking about with AI and the ability just to be able to look in a big picture at these data sets and go, what is it actually telling me? Mm-hmm. How do I remove my bias from it? Or theoretically, the opportunity is there for AI to just open the door to everyone to all of a sudden have not only equal access, but actually have much faster response times, much better ways of looking at the data. So again, the question is, why haven't we just done it? Why what's taking so long?
I mean, there's many ways to go about it, first of all. But I think you said something really interesting that you said that sparked something in me just now is, there are opinions, there are facts, and the speed of what AI is capable of doing is actually test everything. And I think a well-designed AI product and a well-thought-out one is one that is going to accept the fact that there are facts and there are opinions, and it's going to take all of that into consideration whilst making its decision. I think it's very tempting to plug and play and kind of stick the latest GPT in front of your problems and throw your problems at it and expect it to come up with an answer.
Well, this is what Rob was talking about at the Association of Business Psychology, right?
I was so tempted to do that.
It's because, and like, I think there was, am I right in thinking there was a small experiment of doing that and like we got pretty good results? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What was your take on it then? What did you do? Like, your response after these experiments, what did you do?
I already had the opinion based on research that I'd done independently. I knew that throwing everything at ChatGPT or using kind of a plug and play strategy would give us something that would give us an initial surprise and an initial kind of awe around it, But when you actually study the numbers and you actually study the success rate, and you take into account the possibility of hallucinations, and you take into account all of the pitfalls that this new tool gives us, I knew that it's almost like it gives us something that we never knew we could have, but it also makes our problems stranger. So the conversations that me and Rob in the experiment that I then went on to kind of build with him is kind of to showcase that, and kind of, you know, whenever we can, we do want to remove that bias. Whenever we can, we do want to remove the kind of wow factor, because we just want to, as data people, we just want to be correct, and we want to be as accurate as possible, as consistently as possible. That is our mantra, that is our philosophy around it. And so just because we're kind of bringing this new technology in doesn't mean that we suddenly are just going to, you know, walk back on it, basically.
I think the point Rob made about it, and I think came to you from your chat, was around the validation piece. Like,
Yep.
So if we plug ChatGPT into PX Hub and it gives out some results, not only does it paint particular pictures of it, we have absolutely no way of justifying what it's saying. We cannot go and do, like, the example I think we talked about was like when you're at school and you do maths and you have to show you're working and you get points for that, because it's about the logical thinking, cerebralness of it.
Yeah.
That is, if we plug ChatGPT straight into what we do, you can't. There's just no way to validate it. We can't prove how it came to the conclusion X. Whereas actually, I think what Rob laid out in his presentation was a series of steps that you take, each one being validatable. So you're thinking about a much smaller way of breaking down
a problem.
Yeah,
exactly. And it's really funny you say that, because, you know, we're at a stage where ChatGPT does do that now. I don't know if...
Oh, really?
I don't know if you've heard recently, there was the ChatGPT leaks, where a lot of like methodologies of how the pre-prompting that happens behind the scenes is what was kind of leaked and stuff.
Promptly to prompt.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And a lot of it, you know, and there is that kind of logic of, you know, if a task is too large, break it down into a series of manageable steps and stuff. But again, you know, you can only reach a certain level of validation. You'll never be able to really understand what's going on inside the black box, even though there's research happening right now to try and uncover that. But as it's standing alone right now, it would be unethical, in our opinion, to kind of release that into the world in the shape that it is,
especially with the consequences.
I
think this was Rob's main point, is that if there's a challenge, something goes up with it. It's kind of us. It's got nothing to do with OpenAI. Like, if it makes a bad decision or someone suffers a poor consequence on behalf of a piece of technology using its software, right? Like, it's absolutely our problem to solve, and thus the risk. And actually, just like, I think our respect for our customers, moreover, like, we wouldn't want to put something in front of them unless we were certain that it's giving answers that we are confident with, that you would give, right?
Absolutely. And I think, and there's other, you know, if you want to get down to the technicals of it, there's other variables as well, such as, like, we don't know what data has been trained on. We don't know that, and you know, the data that we produce is our data. It's something I always keep hammering on to Rob, and we have the opportunity to kind of almost make our AI products very tailored to our needs, and use, you know, these machine learning and AI techniques to really go above and beyond what is capable and at high speed, and still maintain all of those advantages. But it's just, we're not doing it for ChatGPT. We're doing it our own way and through our own research. So
now, I wanted to write some kind of conclusion to all my findings, but actually this field of AI is advancing so quickly that it would be impossible for me to give a single conclusion on either my opinion, our direction, or even what it all means. To that point, there was a joke at the conference about a piece of research that was done, I think it was something like April 2023, which in AI terms is now ancient, which I think was quite funny, very apt, and also just demonstrates really the speed at which we're talking about here. Ultimately, our decision as a business is to be as responsible as possible. And while we will be embracing all of these technologies, we are doing so with our eyes as wide open as possible to all of the opportunities, but also the risks and challenges presented. And maybe my final thought then is to finish this with a quote. Change has never been this fast, yet it will never be this slow again. Thanks for taking the time to have a listen to our podcast. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to either myself or any of the team at the PX Hub online. And please do hit subscribe if you're interested in following us. There will be more episodes on things like AI, as well as our usual focus around HR, business growth, and creating places that people really want to work at. If you'd like to find out more, though, about the People Experience Hub, head on over to our website, www.pxhub.io. And as always, I've been Ted, you've been awesome. Have a great day. Take care.